back to another edition of the Buy Low Fantasy Sports Show with Mitch and Bam. I'm Mitch. He's Bam. Bam, say hello.
Hi there.
Joining you today on 1490 Newstalk. We're happy to be here. Want to thank you for tuning in. The bye weeks for this week are the Lions and the Dolphins. So for all of you folks playing your Dolphins players, make sure to get them out of your lineup.
Yeah, it's kind of fantasy relevant though, because you're taking away that surefire defense to stream this week and all those free squares when you play the Dolphins, you know. So
yeah, exactly. All right. I think we've talked enough about the Dolphins, even more so than I want to talk about them, even when they are playing. So you ready to go ahead and kick us off and walk the Week 5 slate?
let's do it. So the first game we got up is the Baltimore Ravens at the Pittsburgh Steelers. We got a 44-point total here. The Ravens are 3.5-point road favorites. And the big question here is, which version of these teams is the real team? So we saw the Steelers start 0-3 before beating up on the lowly Cincinnati Bengals on Monday Night Football. And then we saw the Ravens start out a hot 2-0 and have since dropped 2 games. So which version of each team is the real version? I guess we'll find out after this game.
Yeah, absolutely.
So with the Ravens players, the usual suspects are in play. Lamar Jackson, Marquise Hollywood Brown, and Mandrews are all in play. I think Brown especially is due for a pop game with all the opportunity he's been getting and just hasn't been producing that many fantasy points. Yeah. And with Lamar Jackson's scrambling ability, you got that good offensive line. I'm not concerned about this supposed resurgent Steelers pass rush. I think they can handle that. However, I think Mandrews lacks a true ceiling here, dealing with that foot injury for the last month. I think he'll get you some points, but I don't think you're going to have that big 25-point pop game you were getting earlier in the year.
Yeah, this is true. It's true.
And then we got some injuries on the Ravens side that are relevant. You got cornerback Jimmy Smith and defensive tackle Brandon Williams are both out. So James Conner is a good start here. Just keep in mind, he's not Nick Chubb. He's not going to blow up for 40 points for you. But if you've been sitting him on your bench, you're worried about Steelers offense, go ahead and play him here. He'll be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Something to watch with James Conner, though, is that he's kind of developed, or the Steelers have kind of developed this little bit of a 1-2 punch with Conner and with Jalen Samuels. So there is a little bit of concern about James Conner volume. He started out with like 85% of the snaps early in the season. That's evened out a little bit. I think you're looking at a 70-30, maybe a 65-35 split between Conner and Samuels.
Oh, good. Another committee.
That's right.
It's horrible.
That's what we love for fantasy, right?
Yeah, it's the best thing in the world. So additionally, you got Mason Rudolph as quarterback of the Steelers. He's thrown 2 passes more than 10 yards downfield. Just 2.
In 2 games.
Well, in 2 games.
2.5 games now. So yeah.
Yeah, so he's a Charlie check down guy. But good news is both of those passes have went to Mitch's bestie, Deontay Johnson. And he's a guy that averages the most separation of any wide receiver in the NFL. So he's getting open. So the moral of the story here is this Steelers team are playing very, very conservative offense, this young QB, which makes sense. But I think it limits the fantasy upside of any Steelers going forward until they start to open it up a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I do think the 1-2 punch with Conner and Samuels, very good start. And with Rudolph checking down the running backs, especially in a PPR format, I think they're both money. And then, of course, Deontay Johnson with his big playability because he is getting separation. Rudolph does find the open man. So, hey, can't fault him for only throwing 2 passes if that far downfield when that guy's getting that wide.
Deontay Johnson has your friendship for life.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right. All right, let's move right along. Next game on the slate is the Bears at the Raiders. This game is at a 40.5-point total, and the Bears are favored by 5.5. Now, the Bears, even though it technically is the Bears at the Raiders, this game is in London, so it's not in Oakland there. So What you got on the Bears at the Raiders?
Well, as far as narratives go, you got Khalil Mack Revenge Week. He's been talking it up all week, and if you recall, last year, right before week one, like a day or two before, he was traded for 2 first-round picks from the Raiders to the Bears.
Yep.
So this is big revenge time for him. They didn't want to pay him, so he's super mad. And whenever these defensive guys who are already good get like a motivational edge, look out.
Yeah.
And then on the Bears' offensive side of the ball, you're looking at Mitch Trubisky being out. So with Chase Daniel being in there, you got to temper expectations for this offense. I mean, if you had any expectations to begin with. So they haven't been playing that well. So.
Sure. No.
Yeah. And then on the Raiders side of the ball, you got Tyrell Williams. He's a little intriguing in this spot. He'll beat up, but looks like he's going to play. Yeah. And the Bears' only real quote-unquote weakness is to outside wide receivers, and we've seen that Derek Carr is actually willing to target him downfield on occasion, which is rare for Derek Carr.
Yeah.
Because he's another check down Charlie.
Yeah, something interesting about Tyrell to me is that he scored a touchdown in every game so far. So eventually you think that streak has to end. So I think this might be the spot where it ends. I'm not for sure, though. So just be careful about playing Tyrell against a strong Bears defense.
Right.
And if you've got a better option, what I'm saying is if you got a better option, you might be this might be the week to go put them in above Tyrell.
Yeah, I got you.
Yep.
And then continue with the Raiders here. You got Darren Waller at tight end. I think he's a pure volume play because he gets so many targets. He's got like 40% of the target market share with the Raiders. The matchup's kind of okay.
Yeah.
But he's due for a touchdown in the worst kind of way. So this might be the spot you get a touchdown out of him, hopefully.
Yeah, a guy averaging 7, 8, 9, 10 targets a week and hasn't got a touchdown yet? That's crazy talk.
Yeah, the law of averages should even out at some point.
Yeah. And, so this might be the week that Tyrell doesn't get his touchdown and Darren Waller steals it from him.
And the Raiders score a whole 10 points. Nice.
There you go.
I like it. And speaking of the Raiders not scoring many points, the Bears defense is always in play, both in your season-long leagues and daily fantasy. But I think this week you want to stack him up with David Montgomery, the running back of the Bears. Since week one, when he came out flat and they were using 87 different wide receivers to run and using running backs to play wide receiver, this is Matt Nagy's MO. He's really picked up his production. He's gotten slowly more carries, more snaps, more targets. The only thing he's missing is those touchdowns. And I think here against this Raiders defense, who will probably be all day playing with bad field position, I think there's a chance he gets in the end zone.
Yeah.
So stack him up.
I like it. David Montgomery had 21 carries last week. Very nice workload for him.
Very nice.
After getting 6 carries in week one, everybody was confused, and so 21 touches, not a bad amount of volume there. All right, moving on. The next game we have the Cardinals at the Bungles, 47-point total, and the Bungles are favored by 3. What you got on the Cards at the Bengals?
So I hate this game. It's getting talked up pretty heavily in the fantasy community, quote unquote.
Yeah.
So there's a ton of injuries here on this Cardinals offense, starting with the wide receivers. You got Christian Kirk and Damiere Byrd are both out. And to put the icing on the cake, you think like, oh, they're just going to target Larry Fitzgerald more. Well, we have a 4-game sample of the Cincinnati Bungles double teaming or taking away the opponent's top target. They did it with Lockett week 1. They did it with Kittle week 2. They did it with Juju last week, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We got a good sample. So they're going to double team Fitz here. So that raises the question. If you got 2 hurt wide receivers, they're going to double team Larry Fitzgerald. I think where they're going to go with the ball is David Johnson. They have to. They got no other choice.
Yeah.
I think it's a volume play for him.
Yeah, I think it is worth noting, too, that the Cincinnati Bengals give it up to the running back. We just saw what the combination of James Conner and Jalen Samuels did to them. So they give it up to the running back. So DJ is definitely a volume play and a plus matchup here.
Right, and there's also talk of lining him up in the slot more rather than trying to work a new slot guy into Kirk's role. They want to just let DJ play a little more there, which I think is kind of cool.
Yeah.
I mean, he should probably play with Matt Nagy if he's going to be a running back playing wide receiver. But uh, I think he has somewhat of a ceiling. It's not quite what you would expect out of the people that draft him in the first round. We told you not to.
Yeah.
He's not going to get that first round pick value for you this year, but he can definitely get you some good points. And I think here, 15 fantasy points, maybe 20 if you're lucky, it is about right.
Yep, absolutely.
And with all those injuries and the Cardinals having a horrendous offensive line and only matched by their horrendous defense, and they have a really little person playing quarterback who doesn't throw the ball downfield anymore, I think it's time to get off the Kyler Murray train. I know everybody was hyped up week 1 and week 2, like, oh, they're running all those plays, man. And, oh, they're running all these 4 wide receiver formations, man. Well, the thing about NFL defenses, especially defensive coordinators, they're the smartest guys in the league because they have to be.
Yeah.
There's whatever play caller you think on the offense is smart, Vic Fangio is 10 times as smart. It's just the way it is as far as designing a defense.
Right.
So defense figured out, like, hey, they're running these 4 wide receiver sets. I'm going to make this kid march down the field, and Kyler Murray's not able to do it. He can't read defenses. He's trying to outrun NFL defensive ends. He can't do it.
Yep.
So it's finally time to pull the plug on the Kyler Murray thing until at least they get healthy on offense.
Right.
So
makes a lot of sense. I like it. Yeah, what you got on the Cincinnati's offense?
The Cincinnati Bungles are also beat up, particularly at wide receiver. We already know AJ Green's still out. He might be back in a few weeks. Who knows? Mm-hmm. And this week, John Ross, who's their deep threat, was placed on injured reserve. So now you're down 2 starters.
Yep.
So I think this puts Boyd stays in the slot because they run that 3 wide receiver offense, the Ram style. And you got Auden Tate and some guy named Willis will be on the outside.
Tate's talking about Willis.
Exactly. I don't know his first name. Damn. No. Auden Tate's a guy who's popping on a lot of buy low type models. He's getting a lot of volume out there. So if you feel like, oh, I got to stack this game and be a lemming like everyone else, then he's probably a guy you want to stack with.
It's worth pointing out, though, that the Cardinals have been pretty decent against outside receivers. Where they've been giving up a lot of production is to the slot, to the tight end. So, which brings probably to your next point, I imagine.
Oh.
Go ahead. Go ahead and hit us with it.
All right. So last week, everybody was hating on my boy, Will Dissly.
That's right.
Uncle Will running a 5-second 40 at tight end. Everybody's hating on him. But we said to play him, and hopefully you did. This Tyler Eifert week, folks. Tyler Eifert. He had that nasty ankle injury last year. He's got no speed anymore.
Yeah.
He led the NFL in touchdown receptions just a few years ago. And this Cardinals defense is just a turnstile at tight end. And a lot of them were blaming on strong safety Swearinger, who got released this week. He was getting burnt a lot. But I think folks are missing the fact that it's the scheme that allows tight ends a free release, and they run free downfield, and they don't bother to cover him until he's wide open in the secondary. It's a schematic thing. It's not like the players are getting beat off the ball. Nobody's touching him until he's 15 yards downfield, and then a safety's got to come off his other assignment and go cover him. That's what's happening here. Yep. So Vance Joseph is not a smart coach. That's why he's on his 4th job in 5 years. He can't adjust to things, and it's going to be this way until they stop doing it. So from henceforth, whatever tight end is playing the Cardinals, play him.
Yeah, until proven otherwise.
Yes.
All right. I think we've talked the Cardinals and the Bengals much more than either of us.
Yeah, my stomach hurts.
Let's move on to the Jags at the Panthers. This game has a 41-point total, and the Panthers are favored by 3.5 at home. What you got on the Jags at the Panthers?
I think there's a couple keys to this game. You got your boy Gardner Minshew versus that really good Panthers pass defense. They've been playing really well. So
the mustache, yes.
Yeah, the mustache kid. So I think they really need to get Leonard Fournette going here so they can set up that play-action pass game.
Yeah.
And off of that, I think they need to hit D.D. Westbrook, who's popping in a lot of those buy-low models we're talking about. He's getting good volume, and his average depth of target has steadily risen over the season. It's up to like 6 now, where it started the year like 0.8.
Yeah.
So that's a big spike considering that you still got those low targets
Yeah.
bunched up in there.
Yeah, in week
So
one.
he could see a big target spike here with the Panthers expected to score some points.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's two things I want to point, or well, really one thing that applies to both teams in this is that Leonard Fournette and Christian McCaffrey are both getting 90% plus of their team's snaps.
99.
Yeah. So these guys are getting the touches, they're getting the work. If you have them in season long, maybe even in DFS, these guys have a safe floor because they just get so much of the work.
Can't disagree there. And then just keeping with the Jaguars here, cornerback Jalen Ramsey's out again with his mysterious back injury. So it's time to fire up Curtis Samuel. He's due for a pop game. He's been getting a ton of targets and air yards, just hasn't been producing those fantasy points just yet. And then finishing up with the Panthers here, they're going to be missing 2 starting offensive linemen, and they were both out last week. Didn't seem to bother them against the Texans. And missing 2 linemen didn't seem to bother the Broncos last week when they were missing the 2 linemen. So, and they put up 24 points in this Jags D. So I think Kyle Allen's got a nice floor here.
Yeah.
Maybe a cash game guy in DFS, or maybe a streamer for you, a quarterback. You could do worse than Kyle Allen, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with Jalen Ramsey being out, that just opens up so much more of the playbook because so Jalen Ramsey shuts down his side of the field. So him being out just opens up that all of the playbook for Kyle Allen to run. I think he turns that into a nice, solid fantasy production day. Moving on, the next game we have is the Vikings at the Giants. This game has a 43.5 point total, with the Vikings being favored at the Giants by 5.
Whoa.
What you got on the Vikes at the Giants?
Well, another NFL team, some more drama with wide receivers. So Kirk Cousins isn't playing well, but he's also not getting a lot of volume. So you imagine you swing a golf club just 5 times a week, even if you're a guy that hits a drive like 400 yards, you're going to not be as good at it because you need practice. So Kirk Cousins isn't playing well quarterback. So, and with how they're game planning, Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen are kind of being left out in the cold.
Yeah.
So they're not getting the same volume they got last year. So both those guys threw a little hissy fit and say, I want the football too, even though when we get the football, we're losing.
Yeah.
So you got some crybabies here with the Vikings. So you'll have to pay attention because this can distract a team. And then when you're going as a road favorite to kind of a resurgent Giants team, 1-2 straight, this could be a dangerous spot for the Vikings. So they might actually have to throw after all. Who knows?
Right. So it's kind of interesting to me, though, that they're not getting more work because Cousin, Thielen, Diggs are all being paid top 15 at their position as far as salaries go. All 3 of those guys, and they're not getting the work. It's very interesting to me that they're paying them. The Vikings are willing to pay them so much, but not utilizing them.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
And then keeping up with the injury news, the Giants will be missing 2, maybe 3 starting linebackers this weekend. So if you don't want to play guesswork on this Vikings passing game, and I don't blame you, I'm not going to play guesswork with it.
Yeah.
Then just play Dalvin Cook. You're fine. He's getting the run, he's getting the volume, he's getting the receptions, he's getting the big plays. Just play Dalvin Cook and you're fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then on the Giants side, they continue this heavy roster turnover to more of a, I guess you could call it a youth movement. But besides that, wide receiver Golden Tate is back after he got suspended for PEDs. So then they cut 2 receivers. They added 1. So with this wide receiver core, I think Sterling Shepard kicks outside, Tate in the slot, Slayton in the outside on occasion. You have no idea what the usage is going to be here. So I'm going to avoid all these Giants wide receivers for a week until I figure out who's getting the run.
Yep.
Unless you feel lucky, in which case I think Evan Ingram's your guy.
Yep.
Vikings giving up steady production to tight end, specifically Darren Waller had something like 13 receptions against them or something ridiculous like that.
Right.
So yeah, play Ingram, and then Gallman, who had a big week last week against the lowly Redskins defense. I don't think the Vikings is the spot for him. I think he's a sit.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, and speaking of the Redskins, the last game we have for the first part of the show is the Patriots at the Redskins. This game has a 42-point total, and the Patriots are favored by 15.5. Now I want to start this off real quick by talking about I missed bad on the Redskins last week. I did. I missed.
Well, we both did. Yeah. It was a big whiff, but it was worth the shot.
So not only from a fantasy perspective, but just in general, the first 3 weeks of the season they played 3 tough opponents, and so I didn't think they were as bad as what they are. But then they just got completely routed by the Giants, and so yeah, this is a bad team. The only difference between this Redskins team and the Miami Dolphins team is that Dolphins are trying to be this bad.
Yeah.
So, all right. What you got on the Patriots and the Redskins, man?
So the Redskins side, real quick, sit all your Redskins. None of them are worth playing, even scary Terry McLaurin. Even our pal who's getting a start this week, old Colt 45 McCoy. That's right, our old pal. Won us some money on a Thanksgiving one year, a few years back.
That's right.
He's a good guy. So this Patriots defense is just dominant. Yes, they played inferior competition in some spots, but guess what the Redskins are? Inferior competition. So this Patriots defense has yet to allow a passing touchdown. In 2019, in the National Football League, where everyone's passing out of 11 personnel 70% of the time, they've not given up a passing touchdown. Holy crap.
Yeah, that's insane. Well, they've only given up one offensive touchdown.
Yeah, it was a rushing touchdown.
To Frank Gore last week. So, this Patriots
it's a dominant defense.
Yeah.
And especially when they're continuing to play bad opponents. I get it. Like, I want to play the Patriots against the Chiefs. Like, there's probably not going to work in your favor. But against somebody like the Redskins who are, busting out the Colt 45s, that's a good spot. So speaking of the Patriots, you got Josh Gordon, who was looking beat up earlier in the week. He was removed from the injury report. Looks like a full go. Yep. And he has a plus matchup against this Redskins porous secondary. Yep. I think personnel-wise, they got some decent pieces in that secondary. It's just they don't get a pass rush, so there's nothing you can do. You can't cover a guy for 20 seconds.
Right.
So, yeah, Josh Gordon is absolutely one of our favorite plays of the week, I believe. And especially since Burkhead and Edelman are questionable. They were limited all week, so I'd sit them if you don't need them in your season-long leagues. Yeah. And I would really, start Josh Gordon here.
Yeah.
And then I think Tom Brady, because of that, he's a great cash game play in DFS. He's a great start in season-long. That Redskins secondary, as we talked about, is beatable. They don't get a pass rush. And lucky for us, the Patriots don't let their foot off the gas until real late in the fourth quarter. So
yeah. All right, let's hear the news from 1490 Newstalk, and when we come back, we're going to continue walking this slate. Take her away. Welcome back to 1490 News Talk 1077. You're listening to Buy Low Fantasy Sports with Mitch and Bam. Let's continue our slate walk now. We're talking about the Jets at the Eagles. This game has a 43.5 point total, and the Eagles are favored by 13.5.
Ooh, two touchdowns. Wow. That's knucking futz.
What you got on the Jets at the Eagles, Bam?
Yeah, so a lot of injury news here, too. It's the theme of this week, a lot of injuries. So Sam Darnold is out. You got to worry that He's got to quit smooching on those questionable women so he doesn't lose his job there and his spleen don't explode. You know what I mean? So he's got to sort himself out. They need him back desperately. So in his stead, Luke Falk takes the reins as a starting quarterback. And a big if, you're feeling brave, the Eagles are missing several defensive backs. And Robbie Anderson and Jamison Crowder are both popping on some buy low models. Both those guys are playable if you're feeling brave. Wouldn't recommend it, but if you're feeling brave and you're desperate and you need some wide receiver action, you can probably go with one of those two guys. Maybe some GPPs and DFS. We'll see.
Yeah, for sure.
And then keeping up with the injuries, you got the Jets stud middle linebacker CJ Mosley is doubtful, but they'll get defensive tackle Quinnen Williams back this week. So if you want to take a stab at this Eagles running game, it's kind of a gross 3-man committee. Miles Sanders gets all the run one week, and then Jordan Howard blows up on Thursday Night Football. But the thing to remember, Doug Peterson, the head coach of the Eagles, he constructs his game plans using whatever running back is based upon the matchups he finds most friendly. So one week it's Howard, one week it's Sanders, one week it's Sproles. You never know.
Yeah.
So good luck figuring that one out.
Right.
And then keeping with the Eagles here, I think quarterback Carson Wentz and this whole passing game, I think, has a real safe floor. The Jets are kind of a run funnel defense. But without Deshaun Jackson, I don't think there's much of a ceiling here for Wentz. So I think if you're playing DFS, I think Wentz is a good cash game play.
Yeah.
Because it won't take him much to get to that, to hit value for you.
Right.
But Zach Ertz there, he's due for some touchdowns. I think this might be a game he pops for 2, even if he doesn't get the 10 catches for 100 yards. He could pop for 2 touchdowns here because he's been underperforming according to the volume he's got so far this year. So, yeah, I do like some options here from both passing games if by chance Luke Falk can get something going in the passing game.
Right, absolutely. And it is worth noting, like I pointed out earlier, in the game with Christian McCaffrey, Leonard Fournette, they both get 90% of their team snaps. Same thing happens with the Jets. Le'Veon Bell gets 90% of the team touches, the team running back touches. So definitely, and he's targeted a lot. He was the most targeted running back going into their week 4 bye. He was leading the league in targets for running back. So Le'Veon Bell may be an okay play. I don't see a high ceiling for him, but he is getting 90% of those touches. So something to keep in note there.
Nice.
Next game, we have the Buccaneers at the Saints. If you listen to us on Cammy's Extra Point on Friday morning, we talked about the Bucs and the Saints a little bit during that segment. But this game has a 46.5 point total. The Saints are favored by 3. What you got on the Bucs at the Saints, Bam?
Well, I'm not sure what they're putting in the gumbo down there in New Orleans, but whatever Teddy Bridgewater's eating, I think it's giving him some sort of allergy to throwing the ball past 5 yards downfield. He's another check down Charlie, just refuses to force the issue and throw the ball downfield. So yeah. I think the key to this game here is this Bucs defense is weak against the pass, especially the downfield pass. We saw what Danny Dimes did to him 2 weeks ago, what Goff did last week. So Bridgewater has to get the downfield passing game going. He has to.
Yep.
And if there's some downfield shots to be had, obviously Michael Thomas is always in play.
Yep.
I think Ted Ginn might get a few of those. So if you project that the Saints start pushing the ball downfield and Bridgewater goes against his entire history,
yeah.
then I think Ted Ginn would be playable, but I'm not going there.
Yeah.
And then on the opposite side of the field, you got these Bucs stud wide receivers, Chris Godwin and Mike Evans against the Saints secondary led by Marshawn Lattimore. They need to win their matchups, and it's a pretty weak defensive backfield outside of Lattimore. And he's given up the second most passing yards this year. So he played well against Amari Cooper on Sunday night, which, big primetime stage. I guess he showed up there, but otherwise he's been beatable. And you got Jabu, Evans, and Godwin. They're all in play as they've been just white hot recently. They've been just tearing the league up the last 2 weeks. And I think you want to keep going there until it's not available anymore. So I'm going to keep riding that here, especially in DFS.
Yeah, this Bruce Arians offense is really reinvigorated. especially since Jameis has gotten into a rhythm over the past couple weeks. Week 1, week 2, he didn't seem very comfortable, but these past couple weeks he's looked phenomenal. So definitely been white hot lately. This Arians offense has been good for him.
Yeah, and with Alvin Kamara, just the same thing as Dalvin Cook last week. What do you believe more? Do you believe in volume or matchup? Last week, matchup won, so maybe it's volume this week. Kamara has a bad matchup here. This Bucs defense really commits to shutting down running backs. They did it to Christian McCaffrey of all people in week 2.
Yeah,
But he's still Alvin Kamara, so might not be a ceiling game for him, but he's still going to get his run here.
absolutely.
And then I like both defenses here in fantasy, especially this Buccaneers defense, because they're interesting. They can give up 40 points, just like they did in real life last week to the Rams, but they can still score you like 15 fantasy points, which is nuts. Yeah. And I think that's due to how aggressive they are as a defense. They force you to work downfield. So either they're getting a sack, a turnover, or you complete a 50-yard touchdown. That's just how they roll.
Yeah.
So I think this Bucs defense is interesting in DFS this week, and they're looking pretty cheap. And then if you need a defense streamer this week in your season-long leagues, you could do worse.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, moving right along here. The next game we have on the slate is the Falcons at the Texans. Another one we talked on Cammy's extra point on Friday morning. This game has a 49-point total. The Texans are favored by 5. Now, I really think that the key to this game is both of the offensive lines, just like I mentioned on Friday morning. So Atlanta hasn't been able to get anything going on the offensive side of the ball, and Matt Ryan has been sacked a lot compared to previous years. Now, on the flip side of that, the Texans' offensive line has improved some, but really not enough. Deshaun Watson is on pace to be sacked over 70 times this season, which is insane. But that's not all on the offensive line. The reason for that, for me, is Watson himself. His whole game is like running around in the backfield, right? Havoc is going on. He's just running around. Then he chucks it 50 yards downfield. Well, defenses have been taking that 50-yard chuck away from him. They've been covering that guy up. They've been dropping safeties into coverage or whatever the case may be. And so I wonder if the Falcons defense can do this. They use the same tactic. Because we just saw last week the Titans beat them downfield with A.J. Brown and Corey Davis, and that was Marcus Mariota. Marcus Mariota and Deshaun Watson are not anywhere near one another. Yeah. And then can Desmond Trufant, can he kind of shut DeAndre Hopkins down? That's another big question mark for me. Now, on the other side of the ball, the Falcons' offense has been really, really, really underproducing this year. They're 26 in scoring overall. To me, they've got to turn that around. Look at all the playmakers they have. They have Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, Austin Hooper, Devonta Freeman, Matt Ryan as their quarterback. There is absolutely no excuse for them to be in the bottom half of the NFL in scoring offense. So, anything you want to add to this, Bam? What are your kind of keys to this game?
I like Ridley and Hooper here, less than Julio. I think center Alex Mack for the Falcons was looking pretty questionable in a week. He got some limited practices in, so I think he's going to play. So I think that ups the floor and ceiling for the Falcons passing game. And this Texans team is more of a bend but don't break defense. We saw that last week. They only gave up the 1 touchdown to McCaffrey. So I think Ridley or Hooper are going to have to get it done here.
Yep.
So we'll see what happens there. And then on the flip side of the ball, obviously Deshaun Watson, obviously DeAndre Hopkins, obviously Will Fuller are all in play. They're always in play.
Yep.
But I think what's going overlooked here is if Kenny Stills is out, as of now, he's a game-time decision, so pay attention here in a couple hours for those final injury reports. Kiki QT, who was a guy that was really touted up in the offseason and training camp, and he hurt his ankle in the preseason, just now rounding back into shape. Deshaun Watson mentioned him, like, hey, we got to get this guy going, especially with completing those short passes, something they're struggling with. So I think Kiki QT is a very sneaky sleeper, streamer, DFS type who could probably win you some money this weekend if Stills is out.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree with that 100%. All right, moving right along here. The next game we have on the slate is the Bills at the Titans. This game, probably the lowest point total on the slate, 38.5, and the Titans are favored by 3. What you got on this one, Bam?
So the key to this whole game here is another injury question. Is Josh Allen going to play? Looks like he got in a limited practice Friday and Saturday, so we'll see if he's going to play Sunday. Hasn't been officially declared yet, despite some erroneous reports out there. So I think they're going to warm him up pre-game, see how he feels, see if he passes that concussion protocol. So if he plays, though, it ups the ante for the whole offense. If not, we're looking at one of Mitch's best buddies here, Bills tight end Dawson Knox. I think he's intriguing regardless of the quarterback, since the Titans been giving up pretty consistent production to the tight end. You got 3 straight games with the tight end touchdown, and then last week they didn't give up a tight end touchdown, but they gave up 100 yards to Hooper. So they've been not quite as bad as the Cardinals, but they've been giving up consistent production, and Dawson Knox is a guy who's getting some downfield looks too. He's very interesting for a streamer in season long, or maybe a DFS punt. You could do worse than him.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then another matchup I'm looking at is Marcus Mariota, the old pineapple himself, versus this really, really good Bills defense. I don't think I'm going to go there, though. The Bills defense, they're pretty elite versus the pass. Ask Tom Brady, ask Baker Mayfield. Gardner Minshew did light him up, but was a different circumstance. So yeah, I'm going to pass on probably both sides of the ball here, other than some dart throws. And then if Josh Allen is ruled out, I think Derrick Henry and the Titans DSD become a top play in all formats.
Absolutely. Yeah, the Bills defense has proven to be a little susceptible to the run, more so than the pass. And so if Derrick Henry can get something going on the ground, maybe the defense gives them some plus field position with a backup playing, you're able to get some run going. I think that's a top play.
Yeah.
All right, moving along, we got the Broncos at the Chargers. This game has a 44.5 point total, and the Bolts are favored by 6.5. What you got on this one?
Well, the big story here is not so much injury related for once. It's a guy coming back from a holdout. Melvin Gordon was activated last week, didn't play in Miami. I guess him and Eckler are going to split the workload, or it's going to be 60-40 or 40-60. There's some conflicting reports on how much each plays. So you're going to have to pay attention to the reports coming out this morning, who's going to play what role and what have you. But I think there's an easy solution to this. Since the Broncos are a sieve to running backs, they just don't care. They're like the Cardinals are to tight ends to running backs.
Yes.
I think you can play both these guys. Yeah. So if you're someone who drafted Gordon in like the 3rd round, and then went and picked Eckler in like the 5th as backup, start both this week. Just start both of them. You'll be fine.
Yeah. On top of that, the Broncos are without probably their top run-stopping linebacker, Bradley Chubb. He was placed on IR earlier this week. So definitely going to take a step back of a team that was already giving it up to the running back. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think this is a good spot for Phillip Rivers as well. If Mike Williams plays, he said he's going to play. The coaches said not so fast, but it's interesting. But I think the Broncos are still that run funnel defense. So Rivers would have to hit some big plays, Mike Williams. So it all depends on his health. So watch those injury reports this morning.
Yep, absolutely.
And then flipping the other side of the ball, Emmanuel Sanders is good to go health-wise after having a quad injury for the last 2 weeks. So fire him up in daily or season long. And I know what you're thinking. What about Chargers cornerback Casey Hayward? He doesn't follow into the slot. Yep. So Hayward's going to be on Cortland Sutton. So, absolutely. And Hayward's a guy getting a little long in the tooth. And so I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal if he ends up covering Emmanuel Sanders anyway. So
yeah, these are two defenses that play almost opposite one another. The Chargers really don't give it up a lot to the running back, but they do give it up to the pass. The Broncos don't give it up in the pass. They give it up to the running back. So you got to kind of pick your poison there.
Yeah, I'm with you. But I do kind of like Philip Lindsay this week. He's very interesting. And he gets a lot of those what we call high value touches. He gets carries or receptions inside the 10-yard line and targets all over the field. He gets the ball thrown to him. Those are high value targets. And so the Broncos are desperate for a win. I think they might lean on him a bit more here because they're 0-4. They got to get a win. Otherwise, it's going to go downhill there. It's already going downhill. It's going to go even more downhill.
Right.
So I think they give up on this goofy committee for maybe a game and get Philip Lindsay more involved and try to win this game.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, moving along. The next game we have on the slate is the Packers at the Cowboys. This game has a 47-point total, and the Cowboys are favored by 3.5 at home.
Interesting.
Yes, sir.
So this is another injury game. So a lot of injuries to pay attention here. Luckily, a lot of this has already been decided in this game.
Yeah.
So left tackle Tyron Smith is out. And I know what you're thinking, like, is that really a big deal? Because they got all these superstars. Well, it is a big deal.
Yes.
So this takes the entire Cowboys offense back a step or two because he's such a good left tackle and they run so much of their offense based around him just dominating that side of the line. It does take them back a step or two. So This might not be the pop week for Ezekiel Elliott that everyone and their mother is predicting. So he'll still do good, but it's just not going to be that giant monster 40-point game that people think they're going to get out of Ezekiel Elliott that he hasn't delivered in 2.5 years. So moving on. The Packers got some injuries too. You got cornerback Kevin King is doubtful, and he was the guy that would line up on Michael Gallup, who's back this week. He got in some limited practices. We don't know what his snap count is going to be, but they're going to play him. So in season long or daily, I think pick your spots with where to use him. If you got to use him, use him. He'll probably get some production here.
Yeah.
And then on the Packers side of the ball, Devontae Adams is out. And that, I think, yes, that puts the Packers offense back some. But I think this is a good big target bump for MVS, Geronimo Allison, and Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Graham, by the way, has a great matchup here against the Cowboys, who've been giving up consistent production, even to the Dolphins tight ends.
Yes.
Even to the Dolphins, they give up tight end production. That's how bad they are at tight end. So, yeah, Jimmy Graham's a nice little sleeper there for you, a sneaky DFS type guy.
Right.
And keeping up with the injuries, running back Jamal Williams is out. Why does this matter? So, Aaron Jones is due for a huge volume boost here. So, if you were on the fence about playing him, don't be. Just play him. He's going to get a big volume boost. With running back, volume, high-value touches, he's got both of them playing.
Yeah.
And with both quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers, Dak Prescott, we already talked about the injuries affecting both of them. I think they got some safe floors. They're both talented guys, but this is probably not going to turn to a shootout type game with how the defenses are playing.
Absolutely.
So nice safe floors. Play them if you have to. And then the Packers defense is a very, very sneaky play in daily fantasy because I think they can get pressure off that left side where Tyron Smith is out. So play the Packers defense this week. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Absolutely. I think, getting Michael Gallup back gave the Cowboys offense a little bit of a boost earlier in the week for me. And then the news that Tyron Smith is out, that just dropped him. So, so I think the Packers DST could be a nice.
That's easy for you to say.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Could be a nice little sneaky play there.
I like it.
And continuing our slate walk, let's talk Sunday Night Football. In this game, we have the Colts at the Chiefs with a 56-point total. Wow. And the Chiefs are favored by 11.
Shut the front door.
What you got on the Colts at the Chiefs, Bam?
All right, so this is going to seem like a news broadcast and a fantasy broadcast. We got even more injuries to talk about here. So, nice. But there's a reason for all of it, as we've previously discussed. So, starting with the Colts defense, they're missing both their starting safeties, and their middle linebacker, Darius Leonard, is out. Nice. So keep that in mind when we're talking about the Chiefs.
Yes.
T.Y. Hilton is going to play this week. I think this helps the entire offense. But the Chiefs give up the most targets to the tight ends, so Ebron and Doyle are both playable this week.
Yeah.
So we saw what happens to Marlon Mack in negative game script last week. He was a guy that we were on, despite the fact he didn't get a lot of high value touches, but that's a story for another day. So if the Chiefs blow up the Colts here and they're up 28-7, Mack's not going to get a lot of run. So we've seen that Hines, his backup, gets all the run in the negative games. Nyheim Hines. Yeah. So he's a guy who probably catches 7 to 10 passes. Probably a nice play in PPR formats, not so much in standard or half PPR.
Right.
So I think he'd probably a guy get some run here. Yeah. And because the pass volume is likely to be way up, I think Jacoby Brissett is in play against this really bad defense.
Yeah, for sure.
And then on the Chiefs side of the ball, more injuries. You got Chiefs left tackle Eric Fisher's out again. This will be his third straight week out. And we saw against Baltimore, we saw against Detroit, that teams were able to get pressure on Mahomes and throw off the rhythm of this passing game.
Yeah.
So you kind of worry about the Colts pass rush might get home a little bit here, but you also got those two safeties and the middle linebacker out.
Yeah.
Why does all this matter? Is because the way the Colts run their zone defense, they funnel traffic to crossing routes so they can make tackles, right?
Yeah.
And so the best two players the Chiefs have for that is Sammy Watkins and especially Travis Kelce. So I think this is a Kelce blow-up spot. Potentially he could catch 10 balls here.
Nice. And
the Colts don't give up many deep passes either, so don't want to play Hardman. Mr. Fumblerooski himself fumbled like 17 times, and word has it that somewhere near Kansas City he fumbled again just now. You never know.
Nice.
And Demarcus Robinson, same way. They're not good route runners. They can't beat zone defense. I'm not playing either of those.
Yeah.
Nor am I playing any of the 468 running backs they have there now. They got Shady. They got Damian Williams. They got Darrell Williams. They got Hank Williams. They got all kind of running backs. Who knows?
They got all the D Wills.
Yeah.
They're gonna have to sign D'Angelo Williams out of retirement, so they have another D Will on their roster. One thing I want to point out is Sammy Watkins. You pointed this out early in the year. I didn't really pay attention to it.
Yeah, Sammy Watkins is crazy.
Is a zone killer. He is a zone killer. So when he played the Jags in week 1, played primarily zone defense. Sammy Watkins went nuts. And so here he is playing another zone defense. First zone defense he's played since then. Might be a spot where he gets over 200 receiving yards, maybe a couple touchdowns. Whew.
Yeah, nice. I think it probably splits pretty nice between him and Kelce, honestly. But yeah, it's definitely a blow spot. Sammy can get his energy back, or whatever that crazy tweet was he sent out the other day.
Yeah, he's a solar reptilian being. That was from April of last year.
He needs to be medicated.
Yeah, he's solar reptilian being, and
the Earth is flat.
And he relies on solar power to get him going, and. So they're playing at night. They're playing on Sunday Night Football. Do you think?
Oh man, you don't have solar power. I hope he's got a Tesla battery or something.
That's right.
Okay.
All right. The final game we have on the slate is for Monday Night Football.
Monday Night Football.
You got the Browns at the 49ers. The 46.5 point total, and the Niners are favored by 4.
Yes, another injury game, but not so much. So. The 49ers have 15 running backs and 37 wide receivers and George Kittle. So saying all that, Jimmy G, Kittle, play them. They're going to have good games. Kittle's due for a blow-up spot, same as Kelce. And I think that just like us, it affects the Browns. They have no idea who's going to play. They got running back 1, wide receiver 72, but it's all over the field. Who knows? So good luck guessing which wide receiver running backs can do well. Deebo Samuel has been the only one that's getting consistent production of those guys, but just play the Italian and the George Kittle, and then we're good.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And then, just make sure there's a ton of injuries. So leading up to kickoff tonight, make sure you're watching out for that. You got some injuries on the Cleveland Browns defense, which might come into effect here. Yeah. And speaking of the Browns, I think Odell Beckham's due for a good bounce back spot here, assuming he's healthy.
Yeah.
San Francisco primarily plays a cover 3 zone defense, and I think historically he's been good against zone defense. I know what you're thinking. Is he going to be matched up with Sherman? Probably not, so keep playing him.
Yeah. That's assuming that he can breathe. Marlon Humphrey kind of choked him out a little bit last week. So if he's able to get a little wind, he should be all right.
All right, man. Take us home.
All right. This has been the Buy Low Fantasy Sports Show on 1490 News Talk 1077. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see y'all next week.
Goodbye.